in is slowing down a little bit, which is a good signal, I think, to get started. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Community Economic Resilience Fund Program listening style webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started. I am going to pass it off to Mary Collins for an overview of today's agenda and some team introductions. Mary, take it away.
Thank you, Fabiha, and we can go to the next slide here with the agenda. So we are arriving and we're about to do some team introductions. Then we'll go over CERF program overview. We'll have an interactive exercise, kind of an introduction to the tool that we're going to be using called Ideas Boards. And spoiler alert, it's kind of like an electronic sticky note. Then we'll go into our two breakout rooms. The first is about building inclusive planning tables, and the second is about regional, sub-regional dynamics. And then we'll wrap up with some timelines and next steps. So you can go to the next slide, Fabiha. But first, we want to kick off and introduce the CERF team. And CERF is a product of 3 different agencies of OPR, the Office of Planning and Research, the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, and GoBiz. And so we have some, but not all, of the Brain Trust here with us today. The team is led by 3 principals. So Director Sam Asefa of OPR, Secretary Natalie Palugiai of the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, as well as Director Dee Myers of GoBiz. So my name is Mary Collins. I'm the program manager for CERF out of OPR. I'm going to pass it to Fabiha to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Wonderful to see you all. My name is Fabiha. I am the program analyst on the Just Transition team at OPR. And in that role, I have been working to develop the CERF program. Mary, I'll pass it back to you.
We'll wrap up with other folks from OPR, so I'll hand it off to Aegon.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Aegon Turpin is Senior Advisor for Economic Development and Transportation. And I know many of you through our Regions Rise Together work, and very excited to be engaged with the CERF team here as well. So I know there's others, Mary, back to you. And then we have a whole group of folks from OPR and SGC here.
Great, and we will do introductions to the facilitators and note takers that are going to be working in the breakout rooms later on in the breakout room session. But let's head over, if there's no one else from OPR right now, let's head over to the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, maybe starting with Abby.
Sure. Excuse me. I'm Abby Snee, Deputy Secretary for the Future of Work at the Labor and Workforce Development Agency. And Stuart Knox, our Undersecretary, is not able to join us right now, but totally committed and really leading this work, and has done so much work on this kind of transition and planning in his many years. So we're really lucky to have him.
That's great. And I think we have Javier Romero on.
Good afternoon. My name is Javier Romero. I'm the EDD Workforce Services Branch Deputy Director. EDD is the administrative entity in this team. So it's been a pleasure working with OPR and leadership team. I'd like to turn it over to my right hand, Kimberly Meyer.
Good afternoon, Kimberly Meyer, Chief of the EDD's Workforce Services Central Office Division. And then I will turn it over to what I call my right hand, which is Karen Calderon.
Hi, good afternoon. Karen Calderon, Manager over the Special Initiatives Population and Support Unit at the Employment Development Department. And I'll pass it back to Mary.
Excellent. It looks like we have Reg on. Reg Javier, I'll pass it to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Reg Javier, the Executive Director of the Employment Trading Panel. Back to you, Mary.
Okay, I think we covered everyone in Labor and Workforce Development Agency. Is there anyone else that we're missing?
Dee Myers here from GoBiz. Director of GoBiz, and very happy to be partnering with the Labor Agency and OPR on this great work. So I just wanted to check in and say hello to everybody. Relatively not so new in the job, but I'm still meeting a lot of you. So just anyway, delighted to be part of the process and look forward to the ongoing work.
Thank you for joining us, Director Myers. We'll pass it off to Derek.
Thanks, Mary. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet those of you that I don't know yet. My name is Derek Kirk. I am the Community-Based Solutions Supervisor at GoBiz, supporting a new team of regional economic recovery coordinators and staff at GoBiz that are hopefully going to support all of you as you all take off on this CERF endeavor. We also have on our team Kaina Pereira, who I'll pass it to.
Hey there, Kaina Pereira, Senior Advisor for Business Development. Back to you, Mary.
Excellent. And I think we're missing Dan Adler, also from your team at GoBiz. But I think that's more or less the brain trust of CERF. And it's a team that's going to, unless I've missed anyone, please speak up. But and it's a team that's going to be growing and really growing across the state with all of these different regional teams and teams of teams that will be building together. So we talked about the who. So let's go back to the slides, Fabiha, and if we could go to the why CERF slide next. So we talked about the who right now, who is on the CERF team, but why CERF and why CERF right now? So there's several key reasons. One is recovery from COVID-19. So we know that populations, Latinxes, African Americans, and others fared worse during the pandemic, and it really put a spotlight on existing inequities that we've had. We also know that certain industries like tourism, hospitality, and others fared worse during this pandemic. We know that going back to business as usual is not an option. We must level up. There's growing inequality in our economy, especially by race. So for instance, although Latinxes make a majority of the state's population, for instance, a Latina in California only makes 42 cents per dollar earned by white men. And at this rate, Latinas are projected to reach pay equity in 199 years. So we know there's inequity in our economy. We can't go back to business as usual. Also, we know that transition and recovery go hand in hand. We're at this pivotal moment where we're recovering from the pandemic, but we're also shifting our economy to one that is carbon neutral. We know that there's regions in our state that are economically dependent on legacy industries that are threatened, but also we know that industries across the state face shifts. The decline of some industries, the growth of others, and others need to change and evolve, as some of these shifts are happening in our state. And so the competitive advantages, the challenges, the opportunities vary in each region. The solutions are going to look different in LA versus Kern versus the North State. And given the diverse nature of California's regions and industries, there's no one-size-fits-all solution for economic recovery and transition. Let's go to the next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about the who's on the CERF team now, why CERF, and I want to talk about big picture program objectives. So the first one is to promote a sustainable and equitable recovery. I mentioned before that we've got to transition and recover at the same time, and we've got to reduce our carbon footprint across California's diverse economy and all of the regions that industries that we have here. Another big objective here is to support inclusive planning. This is really a first of a kind program of this scale because it's unique given that it provides perspectives of local workers and community members in planning processes. And that's important because inclusive planning is a pathway to ensuring equitable outcomes. It's something that we've heard in different conversations with people, different listening sessions before, is people told us that they wanted a voice in planning for their area's economic future. And so here we are with CERF to build it together. And I'd say the last program objective is to align investments and priorities, really making sure all the boats are rowing in the same direction. We've heard this term that we have, once in a generation series of investments from both the state and federal level. Well, we want to make sure that the state investments, the federal investments, as well as private capital and philanthropic dollars are aligning with the plans that all of the regions have, aligning with investments in new technologies or investments in worker trainings that we have in the state, like high road training partnerships. And part of the technical assistance that will be provided by the CERF team is laying out what all of these different funding opportunities are as we move further along in the program. So next slide, please, Fabiha. So we talked high level. I want to get into further detail about the program design. So there's 2 phases. The first is planning. And so this establishes 13 regional collaboratives that are going to receive $5 million each in planning to establish new inclusive regional planning tables. And that work is going to start probably late spring or summer of this year of 2022. And much like a team of teams, it's going to incorporate existing efforts from areas across the region. And so these different tables will be developing a regional recovery and transition plan that really meets regions where they are. Like I said before, there's no one size fits all, right? We got to meet all the regions where they are. And these plans will include analysis of industry sectors and labor markets with research from third-party institutions. There also will be embedded local coordinator to help facilitate ongoing engagement, partnership, relationship building, and support participants to increase access to broaden participation in the planning process. And so the CERF team will provide technical assistance to guide convening, to guide evaluation, research priorities, and other needs during the planning phase. So, after the solicitation happens, we're not checking out, but we're going to be here working hand in glove with all these different regional tables to make sure that things move forward. And so phase 2, after the planning process happens, there will be approximately $500 million in rolling competitive grants. Those will start to be available in the fall of this year and run until June of 2024, and will include reserve funding for each region for competitive bidding. So in other words, if one region is doesn't have that heads up in terms of planning, they're just starting to get their regional table together, they're not going to be penalized and lose access to implementation funds. And these projects are going to be funded in areas across the region based on regional plans developed and criteria that's outlined. So we want to see projects that will support economic recovery and transition for populations or industries disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, promoting economic diversification, sustainability, and equity, projects that drive the growth of globally competitive, sustainable industries, and projects that bolster equity outcomes by race, ethnicity, gender, and geography. So I want to go to the next slide, Fabiha. We've talked a little bit about the what, and I want to put a snapshot on the where. So this is a map of the 13 different regions. As I mentioned before, each region will be receiving $5 million to build a new regional inclusive planning table. These regions were finalized last month on December 17th. So I will put this link into the chat here where you can find this online. Next slide, please, Fabiha. So as we're thinking about the planning phase, there's a couple of different key actors here in the planning phase. So the first one is the High Road Transition Collaborative. Think of this like a team that's going to include representation from community groups, environmental justice groups, labor, business, economic development, workforce, education, local governments. And the entity that's tasked to bring all of these folks together is the neutral convener. So who would be a right fit for a neutral convener? The tapestry of organizations is different in every region. So that's going to vary a little bit by region, but we want somebody that has good relations, the ability to bring folks together. We don't want to see for-profit companies here. So it could be, nonprofits, philanthropy, tribal governments, and others. And I'd say more specifically, we want to see a proven track record of coordinating across sectors. We want to see executive leadership that reflects the community being served and has a demonstrated track record of governance based on equity and community development work, strong knowledge of the region and its economic needs, ability to lead diverse stakeholders to successful action and with proven history of organizing in the designated region, proven relationships and credibility with diverse stakeholders, and very importantly, a demonstrated commitment to advance equity outcomes in the region. The other role that we have is the fiscal agent. So the fiscal agent is the intermediary in the grant management. This entity has the ability to administer funds and has a fiscal history. You know, there could be an instance where the convener has that fiscal history and has that fiscal capability. And so it could be one organization in the same, but that might not be the case. So an ideal organization for convening, maybe they don't have that fiscal history. So this way, this allows for two organizations to apply together to be able to hit all the requirements that we have, you know, given that these are federal dollars and have a lot of requirements on reporting, audits, et cetera. So I'll put in the chat here some more information on the fiscal agent. It's found on page 4 there. Moving on to the coordinator. So that's going to be somebody hired at the local level from the convener to support with organizing and facilitation. Next slide, please, Sabiha. Okay, so we talked about some of this already, especially the characteristics that we want to see in the applicant roles for the neutral convener and fiscal agent. You know, and I'll say, as we're working on the RFP, we're in the process of putting forth and creating the solicitation, thinking about different questions that we'll ask. And a big part of that is hearing from you today and is receiving your comments on the draft planning phase guidelines. But I will say some highlights include showing ability to lead an inclusively designed regional recovery plan, demonstrating the ability to recruit and organize a diverse body of regional stakeholder groups, you know, experience working with different groups, ability to oversee third-party research. And I'll put a link in the chat here. There's more information here on page 5. And we can move to the next slide, please, Sabiha. Excellent. So in terms of our big picture priorities of the analysis that we want to see in phase 1, the lens with which we're looking at everything include COVID recovery, equity, sustainability, job quality, and economic competitiveness. So all of the research really ties back to some of these key trends. And there's requirements thinking about what's going on in the region, what's the state of play in the region, what does the labor market look like, what are opportunities with respect to growing industries, and more detail is located on page 6. It's the same link that I just put into the chat. I want to make sure that we have enough time to hear from you today. So I recommend looking at page 6 there at the link in the chat. I can put that back in here. And I'm going to turn it back to Sabiha, who's going to tee us up for our breakout room so we can hear from you. Thanks so much.